Good morning everyone. Today we will go for the anatomy of the ventricles of the brain. Okay, these are very important structures. Here only the CSF was produced and circulates. Okay, the ventricles of the brain are the communicating network of cavities filled with the cerebrospinal fluid or CSF and located within the brain parenchyma. The ventricle system is composed of two lateral ventricles, one third ventricle, and the cerebral aqueduct and the fourth ventricle. You can see in these images. Okay, this is whole. This one is the everything. This is the lateral ventricle. Okay, or first and second ventricle. This is the third ventricle and this is the fourth ventricle, and the connection between the third and fourth ventricle, it is a cerebral aqueduct. Okay, and this is the anterior horn, this is the body, this is the posterior horn, and this is the inferior horn. Like that, it has the lateral ventricle. Okay, lateral ventricles are the communicating network of the cavities filled with the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, and this is the located in the cerebral parenchyma or brain. Located within the brain parenchyma, and it is this ventricular system is composed of two lateral ventricles, the third ventricle, and the cerebral aqueduct, and the fourth ventricle. Okay, these are you can see. The choroid plexus are located in the ventricles. Okay, and that produce the CSF. It fills with the ventricles and suborachnoid space following the cycle of constant production and reabsorption of the cerebral fluid. Okay, these are four in number: two lateral, one third, and one fourth. And these are the communicating cavities present in the brain. Okay, or within the brain, and these structures are responsible for the production, transport, and removal of the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, and cerebrospinal fluid is a ultrafiltrate of the plasma that surrounds the brain and spinal cord. It serves the three main functions. One is protection, act as a cushions for the brain, limiting neural damage in the cerebral injuries. Another one is chemical stability. The CSF create an environment to allow for proper functioning of the brain, or maintaining the consciousness, or maintaining the extracellular potassium level, or it is or other any functions. Chemical stability. Okay, another one is by the being immersed in CSF, the net weight of the brain is reduced to approximately 25 grams. This prevents the excessive pressure on the base of the brain. The ventricles of the brain are structures that produce the cerebrospinal fluid, and these are lined by the epidermal cells, which from the structures called the choroid plexus, and by the within the choroid plexus the cerebrospinal fluid was produced. Can go for the next slide. Okay, you can see this is the whole or lateral ventricles. Okay, this is the third ventricle, this is the fourth ventricle, and connection between the third and fourth ventricle is cerebral aqueduct. Okay, and there is a second and third or first, second, or lateral ventricle connects with the third ventricle. Okay, And see here, this is the lateral view. You already seen like this. This is the lateral view and this is the anterior view. You can see this is the lateral ventricles. This is the anterior horn, this is the body, this is the posterior horn, and this is the inferior horn of the lateral ventricles. Okay, and this is the third ventricle, and this is the lateral ventricle to third ventricle. It connects by the intraventricular foramen here, and this third ventricle, okay, it connects the fourth ventricle by the aqueduct, cerebral aqueduct. Here it is present, and this is the fourth ventricle. Okay, and this and fourth ventricle continues with the central canal in the spinal cord. Okay, in here this is the anterior view. These are the lateral ventricles like this. This is whole thing is the lateral ventricle. This is lateral ventricle. This is the third ventricle, and this is the cerebral aqueduct, and this is the fourth ventricle, and this is the central canal. Okay, we can go for the next slide. In that, the brain has a series of ventricles that holds the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. The CSF is created by the choroid plexus. Here it is, choroid plexus is present. Okay, and that choroid plexus is lined by the epidermal cells, okay, which forms the structures, okay, that are called as a choroid plexus. And within the choroid plexus, the CSF is produced. The CSF is created by the choroid plexus, circulate throughout the ventricles until it is absorbed by the arachnoid layer. CSF seems to act as a fluid cushion for the brain, transport some substance into or out to the brain, maintain the pressure around the brain. Then brain ventricles. I already explained it has a 4 type of the brain ventricle, 2 lateral ventricles, 1 third ventricle, and 1 fourth ventricle. Okay, I already told in this is the lateral view of the ventricles. Okay, the brain is batched by the cerebral spinal fluid. Inside the brain there are spaces or cavities, or their cavities are say as a ventricles filled with the CSF. There are 4 ventricles. 2 lateral ventricles are in the brain hemisphere. Third ventricle is in the diencephalon, means thalamus or hypothalamus region, and fourth ventricle is the between the pons and medulla oblongata and the cerebellum. Sorry, they connected by, you can see here, these are the 2 lateral ventricles. Okay, and this is connected with the third ventricle by the intraventricular foramina. You can see here it is the intraventricular foramina, and this is the third ventricle. Okay, it connects with the fourth ventricle by the aqueduct. Okay, cerebral aqueduct, and this fourth ventricle is continuous as a central canal in the spinal cord. There are 3 connections. Okay, or 3 connections. One is the intraventricular foramina, another one is cerebral aqueduct, and to the foramen of Magneti and Lusca. Okay, fourth is the subarachnoid space and cisterna magna. The foramena of the Monroe, okay, it is intralateral to the third. You can see that this is the intraventricular foramena or foramena Monroe. Then cerebral aqueduct, third to fourth ventricle. The foramena of Magneti or Rupna. You can see these are. Okay, this is the fourth ventricle, and this is also says the lateral apparature and central cisterna magna and subarachnoid space, fourth ventricle. These are the three connections present in these cavities. These cavities means what? Ventricles. You can go for the next slide. Lateral ventricle. Okay, this is whole thing. It is a lateral view of the ventricles. This is whole thing is say as a lateral ventricle. This is the anterior horn. This is the body. This is the posterior horn, and this is the inferior horn of the ventricles. And this is the intraventricular foramina, and this is the third ventricle. Okay, you can go for the lateral ventricles. Okay, definition. It is the cavity of the cerebral hemisphere. It is C-shape. You can see here how it is C-shape. Okay, it is C-shape. C-shape. It has three horns at the end central part. One is anterior horn. See, this is the anterior horn. Okay, and this is the central. It is the body, posterior horn. Okay, and inferior. This is the inferior horn. This is the posterior horn. This is the anterior horn, and this is the central part, or it is the body. Anterior, body, posterior, and inferior. Like that, it has the four horns or three horns and one central part. This central part is say as a body. Okay, anterior horn, posterior horn, inferior horn, and body. Anterior horn in the frontal lobe. It is present in the frontal lobe. Posterior horn, it is in the occipital lobe. Inferior horn in the temporal lobe. Central or part of body in the parietal lobe. Okay, like that these are present of the lateral ventricle, but all they are parts of the lateral ventricle only. Okay, you can see here, this is the anterior horn, this is the inferior horn, this is the posterior horn, and this is the body. Anterior horn, it is present in the frontal lobe of the cerebrum. Body, it is present in the parietal lobe of the cerebrum. Inferior horn, it is present in the temporal lobe of the cerebrum, and posterior horn present in the occipital lobe. Okay, like this lateral ventricles are present. The superior view of the ventricle system, lateral ventricles, it has the anterior horn, posterior horn, inferior horn, and body. Anterior horn in the frontal lobe, posterior horn in the occipital lobe, inferior horn in the temporal lobe, body in the parietal lobe. The inferior and posterior horn are connected in the trigone. Okay. Body. First you can go for the body. You can see here it is the body like this. Body lies in the parietal lobe, roof by the corpus callosum, floor sloping from lateral to medial. It is formed by body of caudate nucleus, upper surface of the thalamus, choroid plexus, and body of the fornix. Medial wall formed by the septum of pellucidum. Lateral wall, narrow area at the meeting of roof and floor. Anterior horn located in the, you can see here anterior horn. Okay. Located in the frontal lobe. Roof is formed by the corpus callosum, floor by the corpus callosum, caudate nucleus, and head. Anterior by the corpus callosum, medially septum pellucidum. You can see the anterior horn in the frontal lobe, roof corpus callosum, floor corpus callosum, caudate nucleus, anterior corpus callosum, medially septum pedunculus. Body or central part, I already explained. Roof formed by the corpus callosum, floor sloping from the lateral to the medial. It is formed by the body of the caudate nucleus, upper surface of the thalamus, caudate plexus, body of the fornix, medial wall, septum pedunculate, lateral wall, narrow area of the meeting of the roof and floor. Then posterior horn, located in the occipital lobe. roof lateral wall formed by the tapetum of the corpus callosum. Medially, there are two elevations bulb of posterior horn formed by the forceps major and calcar avis produced by the calcarean sulcus. Posterior horn in the occipital lobe, roof and lateral wall are formed by the rectum and corpus callosum. Medially, there are two elevations bulb of the posterior horn called avilis. Inferior horn. Okay. Location, it is lies in the temporal lobe, roof of tapetum, tail of caudate nucleus, amygdaloid nucleus, steria terminalis, floor, hippocampus, fibri of hippocampus and colloidal image. Can see as this is the inferior temporal lobe. Okay, this you can see here. Okay. Roof is tapetum, tail of the caudate nucleus, amygdaloid nucleus, steria termina, floor, hippocampus, fibra hippocampus and collateral images. Choroid plexus of the lateral ventricle. Okay, is a vascular fringe of pia mater covered with the epidermal lining of the ventricular cavity. The choroid plexus projects into the ventricle on the medial aspect. At the junction of the body of the lateral ventricle and the inferior horn, the choroid plexus is continued into the inferior horn. Okay, now we can go for the second, that is the third ventricle. Okay, I already explained lateral ventricle. It is look like C-shaped and it has the anterior body, posterior and lateral, inferior horn. It communicates with the third ventricle by the intraventricular foramina. Okay, anterior horn is present in the frontal lobe, body present in the temporal lobe, posterior horn present in the occipital lobe, and inferior horn it is present in the temporal lobe. Okay, and these are lined by the choroid plexus. Okay, the left and right lateral ventricles are located within their respective hemispheres of the cerebrum. They have horns which projects into the frontal, occipital and temporal lobes. Okay, and these are help in the absorption production of the CSF. Okay, and lateral wall are two in number, first and second. Okay, in Latin it is said as a ventriculi cerebri. Okay, and it is has the intraventricular foramina that connects the lateral ventricle to the third ventricle. Okay, you can go for the next, that is what third ventricle. It is present in the dencephalon, or you can also say in the thalamus, between the two thalamus. Okay, located between the two thalamus and hypothalamus. This is the third ventricle. You can see here, this is the lateral ventricles and this is the third ventricle. You can see here, this is the third ventricle. This is thalamus and hypothalamus. Okay, it is present in the between the two thalamus and hypothalamus. Okay, this you can see like this. The roof is a fornix and tela cordi. Floor is a hypothalamus. Laterally thalamus and hypothalamus. Anteriorly lamina terminalis. Posteriorly opening into the cerebral aqueduct. Posterior commissure, pineal recess and habenular commissures. Now we can go for the fourth ventricle. Okay, it is present opposite to the brain stem, and it is connects with the third ventricle by the cerebral aqueduct and is continuous with central canal. Okay. The fourth ventricle are the location of the fourth ventricle. You can see here, this is the fourth ventricle. Okay, this is present in between the brainstem and cerebellum. This is the cerebellum. The location anterior to the cerebellum and posterior to the pons and the superior half of the medulla oblongata. See, this is the pons and this is the medulla oblongata and this is the cerebellum. Anterior to the cerebellum, posterior to the pons and medulla oblongata, and superiorly half in that open part of the medulla oblongata. Fourth ventricle, a tent-shaped cavity filled with the cerebrospinal fluid, lined with ependyma cells, continues above with the cerebral aqueduct of the midbrain and below with the central canal of the medulla oblongata and the spinal cord. The floor is the posterior surface of the pons and the cranial half of the medulla oblongata. Laterally, inferior cerebral pedunculate and superior cerebral pedunculate. Roof is tent-shaped. Roof projects into the cerebellum. See here picture. Situated anterior to the cerebellum, posterior to the pons and medulla oblongata, and it is a fourth ventricle, possesses the lateral boundaries, roof and rhomboid shaped floor. Now you can go for what are the function of the ventricles. Ventricles mainly produce the CSF and circulation the CS. The clear water-like fluid resides within the ventricular system. Okay. The function of the CSF. The main function of the ventricle is produce the CSF. Okay. Function of the CSF is cushing and protects the central nervous system from the trauma, provide mechanical buoyancy and support for the brain, serves as a reservoir and assist in the regulation of the contents of the skull, nourishes the central nervous system, removes the metabolites from the central nervous system, serves as a pathway for the pineal secretions to reach the pituitary gland. Okay. Now how it is CSF is circulates. Okay, first it is a lateral ventricles, this is the third ventricle and this is the fourth ventricle and this is the central canal. Okay, it is start at the produced at the lateral ventricles at the plexus corrideus, formation monoral. Okay, or it is from that is formed and from the intraventricular foramen to the third ventricle or foramina monori to the third ventricle to the fourth ventricle by the aqueduct cerebral aqueduct or aqueduct cerebelli, and fourth ventricle to the it is plexus corrideus. Okay, plexus corrideus, and this is a foramina magnedia and foramina lusci to the subarachnoid space. Okay, this is the subarachnoid space. Okay, this is the subarachnoid space, and subarachnoid space to the arachnoid granules. These are the arachnoid granulators. Here it is further reabsorbed, or from the here and from here venous sinus is from here it is CSF is reabsorbed. Okay, this is a circulation of the CSF. Lateral ventricle, third ventricle, fourth ventricle, central canal, and this is the subarachnoid space to the arachnoid granulations and venous sinuses. This is the circulation of the CSF. CSF formation and circulation. CSF is formed at the choroid plexus by the cells lining in the ventricles. Okay. Then normal blood-brain barrier is important for the normal chemical results of CSF. Rate of formation 500 ml per day. Mechanism of formation: selective ultrafiltration of plasma. Active secretion by the epithelial membrane. Mechanism of exertion or absorption is exertion value equal to production value that constant CSF value. Absorption occurs at the arachnoid villi produced through the dura to the venous sinuses of the brain and blood stream. Okay, you can see here these are the arachnoid villi, and this is the venous sinuses, and these are the veins. Okay, it is reabsorbed into the venous system along with arachnoid villi and arachnoid granulations that projects finally into the dural venous sinuses. By that, cerebrospinal fluid is reabsorbed. Okay, and another one thing. Okay, in normal adults, the CSF volume is 125 to 150 ml. Approximately, it is 20% of the CSF is contained in the ventricles. The rest is contained in the subarachnoid space, in the cranium and spinal cord. The normal rate of CSF production is approximately 20 ml per hour. Okay, and per day it is 500 ml is produced, but it is circulates only 125 ml of the CSF. Okay, and CSF is formed in the choroid plexus by the both filtration and active transport. In normal adult, the CSF volume is 125 to 150 ml. Approximately 20% of CSF is contained in the ventricles. Okay, and it is reabsorbed in the arachnoid villi, arachnoid granulations, and dural venous sinuses. Okay, the in some cases, to study the composition and pressure of the spinal fluid, it is very necessary. In meningitis cases, everything, or hydrocephalus, there is not proper absorption of the cerebrospinal fluid. In there is hydrocephalus, there is dilation of the ventricles will occur. Okay, this is very important. Okay, cerebrospinal fluid flow anatomy from production at the fourth ventricle to the third ventricle by the intraventricular foramen, third ventricle to the fourth ventricle for the aqueduct cerebrum, then fourth ventricle to the subarachnoid space and spinal cord, and in the dural venous sinuses. Okay, like that, this is CSF is flow, or it is what you can say, it is circulate like that. Okay, and it is secretion varies between the individuals with adult production, usually ranging between 400 to 600 ml per day. Okay, CSF was produced, but it is circulate only 150 ml to the estimated adult CSF volume is estimated to be 50 to 125 ml. Okay, in that distribution, 125 ml is within the subarachnoid space and 25 ml within the ventricles. Okay, this is about the cerebral fluid and the ventricles. Thank you very much.